guys ready?
For Deaf Space Pioneer Day. Woo, let me see it.
Come on, get those hands in the
Presenters,
air.
thank you very much for coming. I do want to introduce my co-MC, Jeremy Weston. This is his sign name.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for coming out today. Wow, we are so excited to be here and really honored to see these panelists. This is so exciting.
And that's so true. We want to thank all of our panelists today, our presenters that are going to be coming. We have 4 fantastic ones that have worked for NASA, worked on going up into space, math, exploration. All 4 of these panelists have that experience.
If you could move to the next slide, please.
Okay, now let me explain. We have 4 presenters today. Our 5th presenter, which we did plan to have 5, was not able to make it. However, we want to show you who that presenter is in her picture. And then this is her biography. Worked for NASA for almost 10 years, focusing on space rocket systems, the space launch system. And so we hoped that we were going to get her to come, but it didn't work out. But we still have these 4 panelists. Let's introduce them. We have Johanna Luck.
A round of applause, please.
Next. Austin Viday. And this is his sign name, Austin. It kind of looks like he's throwing a peace sign, doesn't it? That's neat. Julia Velasquez. So these are our 4 presenters. Oh.
And I would like to add David Meyers.
Oh.
Apologies, David, that we missed you in the beginning.
Of course. We saved the best for last. Look at that picture. He was on the cover of Gallaudet Today. Today. Wow.
All right. So we all forget things, but I forgot to introduce my co-MC. This is Austin Andrews.
That's right.
So we have 2 Austins here in Austin.
That's right.
How ironic,
you and me,
right?
buddy. You and me.
So just to let you know, we have our 4 presenters. They are all deaf and hard of hearing, just like many of you that are out here today.
That's true.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about our communication today and what that's going to look like. The 2 MCs we are hearing and we will be signing. And you may notice the English captioning over here, and you may wonder how that's happening. So we're using ASL, and as you know, we have interpreters speaking English. The CART provider is listening to the English and captioning the text. So you out there that are watching via live stream, you have access as well, and you can see us signing, you can hear the interpreter speaking English, and you can see the English on the CART. And so that's really a fabulous setup. And I want to thank Deaf Tech for supporting us and TSD for hosting this event today. So
Most
many
definitely.
thanks. Also, I'd like to thank CART and the English interpreters.
Thank you all. And just like Jeremy said, we are supported and sponsored by Deaf Tech. We want to thank them for their sponsorship because without them, it would be so hard to organize and run this day.
Truly impossible.
So what we're going to be doing today are 4 things. First of all, each of our presenters will give their presentation for about 5 to 10 minutes. So we'll watch each of them present about their background, events in their life, and so forth. If you have a question and you want to ask that, that's fine. Feel free to ask it. But how you do that is email deafspacepioneers@gmail.com.
Do you mind sharing that email address one more time, please?
Sure. deafspacepioneers@gmail.com. And you can see that up there on CART.
Yes, please email your questions.
Yes.
You in the audience as well can send emails too.
We're asking you to email your questions because after each of the presentations are done, we're going to have a break, and then we'll have a panel. The panel are actually going to consist of the same 4 presenters. But within that, we're going to be asking them some questions. After the panel is done, we will then go to lunch.
So we'll have the panel, we'll take a break, we'll eat lunch. After that's over, we'll have some live stream. Sorry, you'll miss that if you're with us via live stream. But please send the evaluation after the panel's over. So for those that are here today, we will be meeting in the CTE building, and we'll be in the MPR room, the multi-purpose room. So you'll be able to be involved in some hands-on activities throughout the afternoon. And Austin and I will see you over there as well.
Those hands-on activities are going to occur, plus we're going to have opportunities for these panelists to give their autographs and for you to meet and shake hands with them. I think that's it, right?
I think we've belabored long enough.
That's right. Oh, too long. So let's get on with the presentations. I do want to welcome, first up, Johanna Luck. So an interesting fact here, she was actually born in Germany. And guess what? Learned math before she learned language.
Wow.
Amazing. It's so interesting. Just watch her story and the information she gives. Let's have a big round of applause for Johanna. Can everyone see me okay? Great. All right. Well, I'm here to share about my work experience at NASA. So the picture up here just shows the front of my building where I work, and I work at the Armstrong Flight Research Center, and that's in Southern California, so a little bit above LA. And I am focused on space rockets and space launching, but actually most of my work is with plane design, but it correlates to space launch. So right here you see a picture of the plane, and that's right in front of my building. And I do a lot of research on planes. So this black airplane in the picture is one of the fastest aircrafts. It goes about 3 Mach. Now, let me explain what Mach really means. It's related to the speed of sound. And it's how fast the speed of sound is. And it's 343 meters per second. So if you just think about the size of a ruler, a wooden ruler, that's about a meter. So if you think about 343 rulers lined up, and once you start a clap, that sound can go the length of 343 meters in 1 second. And that is a Mach. So when we say 3 Mach or Mach 3, that means 3 times the 343 meters. So that gives you an idea of some research that I've done in the past, and I was actually in middle school at that time. Okay, so before I really get into my story, let me introduce myself a little bit. I enjoy a variety of things. I love reading books. How many of y'all like reading books? Let me see hands here. Oh, I see someone shaking their head like they don't like to read. It's all right if you like other activities. So in my free time, I do like being creative, doing some art. I actually make quilts. You can see a picture of that up here. So there's a lot of small squares of fabric that I will sew together and create a large quilt out of those pieces of fabric. I also enjoy crocheting. I just made a red monster. You can see up there one of those monsters for my niece, born in September, so I went ahead and made that as a pillow for her. I'm kind of a new aunt, so that's exciting for me. I also enjoy video games. I enjoy face painting on special events or days like Spirit Week for schools or Halloween, however you sign Halloween. There's so many different signs out there. But I enjoy face painting, so I did the tiger up here. I like baking as well, sweets and cookies. Sometimes I'll bake things and I'll bring them to my coworkers and kind of bribe them a little bit with some of those sweets. Okay, so let me tell you about my work. I actually am working on 2 projects. You see the name of it up there. It's called SCRAT, Subsonic Research Aircraft Test Bed. So again, acronymed SCRAT. And what exactly that is having a plane, and you're experimenting and evaluation on just the data for that plane. And so all of the information and data is then installed in the plane, and you do experiments, and I have several examples of the type of experiments we do. Okay, so this is a regular airplane, and it's a picture of their just conventional flaps. So you see that part of the airplane that kind of moves up and down on the wing. That's a flap. So if you notice right now, it's hanging down, and there's actually a gap on the wing of the plane where that flap is. So let me show you next. Oh, it's a little bit difficult to see on this picture, but when the flap goes down, it doesn't create a gap. You actually see these little waves on the tail end of the wing. So a conventional flap is just an open gap when the flap goes down. But with this one, there's actually some flexible metal or waves in the metal so that there's not a gap. So we're experimenting to see if that type of wing flap is better. So we're predicting about maybe there's a reduction of noise. You know, typically hearing people on an airplane will complain that when we're landing, it's so noisy, it's so loud. And so NASA really wanted to figure out how to improve the noise reduction on airplanes. But, you know, that's a money cost experiment. And so we're trying to figure out how to save money and save fuel as well. So my next experiment, I worked on landing gear. So this is conventional landing gear. And then the second picture is an experiment where we added a cover for the gears. So picture a motorcycle. And if you imagine the motorcycle, they tend to have some sort of cover on the upper part of the wheel, a metal cover. Do you know why that is? One student said to block wind. It actually helps airflow. Instead of going right up into the driver's face on the motorcycle, it flows smoothly over the machine. And so with this cover, you actually are going faster and you're saving fuel. And so we wanted to experiment on landing gear if this was to help. With the conventional landing gear, the wind gets all into the nooks and crannies. It's also very loud. And so again, very noisy when they're landing. And so we're testing to see if we can make it quieter, save on several things. And then we have to kind of predict and hypothesize what the results are going to be. So we put all of these parts onto the plane and test it out. So let me ask, what exactly do I do? Do I just kind of sit back and watch these things take place? Not at all. I am very much a participant. So there's a picture right here of a black screen and a black box and a keyboard. So the black box in itself is a computer, however you want to sign computer. Again, there's so many signs. And it's connected to the monitor. And so we're creating an environment testing decibels. And so we're using computer-coded language. And you can kind of see some of the colors up there on the text. So we type the computer code. And then on the airplane, all of that information and data goes into this device. And you can see it's basically just a shelf of the server and all of the computer things. And so it's instrumentation. And let me explain what that does. It's actually a system responsible for all of the data, the temperature, the airspeed, the flap motions, landing gear, going down, coming back up into the plane. All of that data gets sent into this quote-unquote server, and it holds on to that data, while at the same time it's sending it down to the ground to a control room, and I'll talk about a control room soon. And then they're responsible for making sure everything's developed appropriately, repairing and fixing things. I'm also a software manager, which means that if people want to upload their own program on the plane, I actually have to check it out, make sure it's a correct version and not an older version, making sure it's following the proper protocols and procedures. So once I check it out and approve it, then they're able to upload it onto the plane. And so I'm there for flight safety. I really check out flight safety. So I develop and I work on flight safety and do experiments as well. So a lot of fun things.
So this is the control room. So I've been involved. We have an interpreter there. We're streaming the information from the instrumentation boxes in the plane. And I just want to give you an idea of some of the code. And I would give you a minute, too, to read over some of this information soon. So this is our second project that I'm working on. And I haven't built this yet. This is a vision of what it will look like. So the goal is for this plane to be faster. We want a faster plane. So you remember I was talking about the Mach speed? If you go above Mach 1, the plane could make like an exploding sound. And deaf people would also feel that vibration. So when a plane takes off, it's not permitted currently just because the noise scares people. So we've been doing partnerships with other businesses to progress in this endeavor. So I'm the software lead developer, and this would attach to the bottom of the plane, and I'll talk more about this later on. So one more thing before I go, I want to share a life lesson. You can do it. You know, don't think can't. You want to be an engineer, you want to do other things, you can do it. Thank you so much. Wow. Inspiring. Wow. Really amazing, their work. I am so impressed. Thank you so much for your story. And we had a few late arrivals, so I want to welcome you to Deaf Space Pioneer Day. Thank you for coming. And if you notice, we have CART over here, so you can see the English subtitles. We have the presenters using ASL, and then we have interpreters speaking English. So just wanted to share that with you in case you didn't know what it was. Next up, we have Austin Viday. Come on over. Thank you. Thank you.
Come on, let's give him a round of applause.
Thanks
for coming.
All right. So I am really happy and excited to be here. Thank you. Thank you. What I'm going to be talking about today is engineering out in space. And now this is what we're going to discuss today. First, I want to talk a little bit about me and who I am. I went to school at University of California. Have you been there before? Have you seen this campus? I've been involved with Deaf Academic Bowl and participated in many activities there. And now I'm in my senior year at UCLA studying computer science. So after high school, I didn't go directly into computer science. It was hard, but I loved it. So first, I went to a community college, and then I was able to transfer to UCLA. And that's where I've had my experiences. You know, so I had that experience of not being able to go directly to the college I wanted and had to try again. Also, I've been involved 2 times in an internship at NASA and also had an internship at Amazon as well. I've also run a Facebook page, Signs for Humanity, and this is how I sign that. I've been deaf since the age of 3, and at 8, I had full hearing loss. I wasn't a proficient signer until almost the age of 12, but I've learned to really cherish ASL. It's a beautiful language, and I share more about it on my vlog. This picture here, me sitting in a rocket, and then also, that's me. But really, I'm not an astronaut. No, I'm an engineer. I develop code and programs, and that's what I do. So this is a vision of what I imagine myself doing, hacking away. But in real life, it's not always like that. It's more like this. Busy at work. I work with a team of engineers, and I'm a software engineer. Are you familiar with that term? I can explain more about what I do. So when I identify a problem, I want to try to solve it. And we work with a team, and we discuss and how we can fix it. We have interpreters there, and our minds are all busy at work. And we're writing down our ideas. We're doing research on the internet. We're having dialogue, and we are just have this strong desire to develop a product where we get the product and then deliver it, and then we get feedback, and it comes back to us. I've put my heart into it, and then they tell me, no, do it again, do it again. And so it's a constant work until it is an accepted product. And it requires several tries. A lot of problem solving is involved in this process. Also, NASA has unique opportunities to be able to see really awesome things. And you can visit and touch different things that other teams are working on, and just the experience is so rich. Also, we work together as a team, and there's so many different types of teams that you can be involved with as well. So my first internship was at the Johnson Space Center, and that's near here in Houston, and that was my first experience. Are you familiar with this? Do you know what this is a picture of? The International Space Center Station. It's the International Space Station. So that revolves around the Earth. And many astronauts have gone up to the space station and done different experiments there. So you can see here, and what I do is develop code that is used for safety engineers at NASA to be able to calculate and imagine if something goes wrong, they can look on the website and do a search, and there's graphs where they can find information and find the mistakes. So that's my work. Second internship was at the Kennedy Space Center. That's in Florida, where the astronauts launch. Also, you can see us all working together on this rocket. In this next slide, you can see the control room. So many computers, big screens, and I've helped to build some of the software. And there's a lot of operators in there doing research, seeing what's good, what's working, getting things ready. And I've helped build and test code for the control room. So now I'd like to talk about why I chose to work at NASA. Personally, I think they have outstanding support for deaf and hard of hearing people. The interpreters are there, and they're so supportive. Of course, sometimes there's an interpreter that just doesn't match. And, we explain things, and they're very understanding, and they help the interpreters. Communication is easy. Also, NASA has advanced and innovative technology. You don't see that out in other industries. NASA is really top of the line technology. And I'll just show you an example. This is a robot that can copy an ant. Copies ants' work, how they work in colonies together. So if you sent an ant to the moon and a colony of ants could work, and trying to analyze and copy and replicate that. If you could go back. This is a drone that's intended for easy navigation of Mars. And this is something super cool. I call this a racer, and it would be able to dig on Mars. Understand that it's hard to send technology to Mars because of the high cost. You know, getting a rocket to Mars is very expensive, and this is very light, and it works with low gravity. There's been a lot of problems that you would experience that you would not experience on Earth. So this has just been a fascinating and cool place to work. And really, it's just the beginning. The universe is ongoing and infinite. So we need to explore. We need to see new planets and what's out there. It's just the beginning. This is so important and really touches my heart and really just gives me chills too. We have to be brave for our future. We must. Thank you. I believe in you. You can. Deaf people can. Say yes, you can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Austin Viday, everyone. Round of applause for him. Okay, now we've noticed that more and more people are arriving in the audience. We have live stream that's still happening. Hopefully you're enjoying the show so far, watching. Now, just watching and paying attention to these presentations. Again, if you have any questions that come to mind, feel free to email all of those questions to deafspacepioneers@gmail.com. And that includes all of the live stream audience. Email your questions to that email address, because soon we will have a panel and your questions that are emailed may be presented to our presenters. Next, we have Julia Velasquez. All right, Julia, now I want to let you know this one important reason that you all are here and why Julia and all of our presenters are here is to build that bridge for these young men and women to have a role model. And I want you to think about, if you were to just imagine space and looking up at space through a telescope as a little kid, that is what Julia's journey is going to give you, a glimpse into that experience. You know, I'm really excited to be here. I'm so glad that we're hosting this event. This is really the first time that I've been able to be with colleagues that are deaf and hard of hearing in my field. So I hope that this continues and all of you will be part of the field as well. You know, some of you may already know me. I recently was on a TV show called Exploration Outer Space. And I was the first deaf student astronaut and was able to go to Hawaii just to get an experience of what it would be like if we were to live on Mars. So that's the TV show. And here are just a few pictures of what I experienced. So if you're curious, please feel free to email those questions to me. I actually have a question for all of you, though. Do we have flying cars today? Okay, I see some yeses, some nos. Okay. What if I actually told you that we've had flying cars for the past 100 years? Do you believe me? Okay, we got some yeses, some maybes. An airplane is considered a flying car. And you're thinking, no, that's not a car, that's an airplane. So every time you see or hear that word car, you're envisioning a particular automobile or shape or whatever. But if you were to throw out a car is a car and a plane is a plane, and just envision the function of what a flying object is. Just think about the function of it. So it's not thinking out of the box, it's getting rid of the box altogether. And being in that mindset helps you to be more creative. And creativity is so important because reaching Mars, our survival is going to depend on your creativity, your innovation, and pursuing your passions and dreams. Because you are what we call the Mars generation. In your lifetime, people will be going to Mars, could possibly live there, and it's going to be your innovations that lead the way. So believe in yourself. I grew up and I always said that, deaf people are going to go to space. We're going to be able to go to space. But in all honesty, they kept saying you have to be able to hear. For communication, you have to be hearing. And I was like, nope. Not even going to deal with that. I went into an internship program again at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And then I also was in Maryland for a while. And I networked with so many executives, with head engineers, head scientists, and I just kind of got a pulse from all of them in the field of could deaf people go to space? They were very supportive of it, but they said, there's so much risk involved because of communication. You have to be able to talk on the radio. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, there's got to be another way. I'm going to tell you something that's a little bit funny. Space is loud. I don't mean actually like space itself, but launching into space. The International Space Station, the astronauts actually complain how loud it is because those machines are running 24/7. The oxygen machine and the experiments and all of these things that are going on. It's very noisy, and the hearing astronauts actually have to deal with a loud environment. But they're the individuals that depend on sound in order to communicate. So, for example, in 1985, there was one amazing event. It was the Apollo Soyuz. Now, Apollo was from the United States of America, and Soyuz was from Soviet Union. And it was such a historical happening. But they really don't tell you what happened after those launches. When the United States astronauts came back, their landing into Earth was so loud that, there are 3 main astronauts and they have responsibilities to, turn switches on and off or to speak with the control room and make sure everything's okay. The 3rd astronaut makes sure everything's ready and then hands the responsibility off to the 1st astronaut. But the 1st astronaut at that time didn't hear the 3rd astronaut's command of "we're ready." And so the 1st astronaut, because it was so loud, actually passed out. And they were having to put an oxygen mask on, and they were coming in too fast. They did eventually land safely, but they had to take these astronauts into the hospital and had about a 2-week stay. And the media and all of these newspapers were questioning what happened. And the 1st astronaut admitted, I couldn't hear them giving any verbal commands or cues because it was so noisy. And I just thought, you know what? If we were deaf astronauts, do you think that would have happened? And that was just my immediate thought and immediate response to that. So now, thinking about going to Mars, we have a large challenge ahead of us because Mars is really far away. It's 140 million miles from Earth. Earth in itself, a diameter of maybe 7,900 miles. So if you were to thinking about getting to Mars, it would take us around 8 to 9 months. Now, communication from Earth to a rocket going to Mars would take about 20 minutes. So it would be a 20-minute delay. So Mission Control Room would be saying hello, and then it would take 20 minutes to communicate. And so now scientists and engineers are starting that discussion of how to overcome that communication barrier, so to speak. And so they're researching, and research has proven that there is a need for video feed. And so now the opportunities are open for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. There are so many things being developed for spacecraft, and there's a lot of, technology, a lot of buttons and switches and everything that astronauts have to learn. And communication through email and text is so viable. So it's an exciting time for us. And it could be, 20, 30 years down the road, this could be the view that you see in your lifetime. You can see far off in the distance. It's this little bright speck. And that right there is not a star. It is Earth. And that means that this could be your view. You walk out of your house and you see this and you're like, wow, my old home. That's what that was. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. That really was so inspiring. And it really got me thinking about life on Mars. Sometimes we feel, impossible to dream of such a thing. But actually, in the future, we will go to Mars. It's not a sci-fi story anymore. This is our new reality. So next, I would like to introduce David Meyers. Please give him a warm welcome. Hello. I'm really glad to be here. So, came from California, flew here. This is not my first time here. I live here in Austin. Been in this building many times, so I'm happy to be here again. And I'm happy to meet with you today. I'm glad we have the present presenters here. Julia talking about going to Mars. Oh my gosh. Pretty far to travel, right? Now, my involvement was from the past. 1960s, that era. That was a time where NASA was establishing itself in 1959, and I got involved in 61. The reason for that was back then, really first, Russia had sent a rocket into space. They were the first. The first. America was enraged. They didn't like that. They had had a competition for a long time, and America wanted to be first. But then Russia was first to launch a spaceship. So the president elected in 1961 to accept the challenge that we will go to the moon. We will go to the moon. And that was the challenge of the time. That was before any astronauts had actually gone into space. There was a lot of consideration at the time about motion sickness. And maybe you have experienced that yourself when you're out on a boat and you get sick while you're out on the water. The motion makes people sick. So at that time, going into space where there's zero gravity, there's a lot of problems. Very different from what happens on Earth. What happens in zero gravity, if I drop that paper, it drops to the floor. However, in zero gravity, if I dropped this, it would stay in the air. There's nothing to cause it to go down. So they had to figure out a way to pull things down. And our body's used to that. We're so used to that being held down. You know, we're used to having an environment that has gravity. So they were finding ways to prevent the motion sickness in space. So the astronauts, you know, they're responsible to drive in space. They're responsible if they're sick. They can't do their job. And so that was a big consideration. So NASA knew that motion sickness originates in the inner ear. They knew that. So they started looking for people whose inner ear did not function. So people that had experienced spinal meningitis, which involves high fever, where the inner ear, quote unquote, dies, cannot get sick. So they needed people who met that to be able to do research and find ways to prevent motion sickness. So there was a research group, and that was a group of hearing people, and then there was a group of deaf people who had formerly had meningitis and non-functioning inner ears. And they were comparing the two groups. And we went through so many different types of experiments involving movement. So they started going with Florida School for the Deaf, and there were several people from there. They brought them in and got them involved with the research. They found that they needed to find people that could go through the research and also write about their experiences. Some of them were not very good at that. So then they went to Gallaudet University, and I was a student at Gallaudet at the time. So they came to Gallaudet, and the screening, they screened so many students, and then they picked 10. All of which who had had spinal meningitis, all of us. So they brought us to be involved with that research, and it was ongoing. It was about 8 years. So I didn't actually live through moving there, but they would have us come for a few days at a time, and we would stay for a month, 2 months. It varied upon the need. It was a wonderful experience, and you know, something, again, you know, I was involved before, you know, it just, NASA just kind of exploded with so many different stories and different experiences. I was involved before those things, all in the start. And you can see the picture over there. That's the zero gravity experiment, and that's me. All right, thank you.
Let's give him a round of applause. Wow. You know, if you feel like technology has just started and is developing, you can see through David's story that there is a long history of space and exploration. So next, we are going to have a 15-minute break, and Jeremy's going to be explaining about that soon. I do want you to keep in mind a 10-minute break, correction here, not 15, just 10 minutes. So after the break, we are going to begin our panel of questions for our presenters. Now, we already have some questions prepared to ask, but again, if you have questions, remember to email those. And for those watching live stream, please email in your questions.
Great. And let me let you know, the live stream, actually, you need to look that way.
My bad. All right. Let's see here.
Hey, guys.
No, live stream is right here. See? No.
Okay, so next we will have the panel coming up. So 10-minute break. So 10 o'clock, come back at 10:10. Got it? Okay. Take a restroom break. Do what you need to do. 10:10. Back in your seats. I want to talk about a little bit how much I love about this deaf school and just how inspiring TSD is. Texas School for the Deaf is an amazing place. And you being here, you're very fortunate. Okay. Next time I'm going to tell you guys 10:09. Right? You know how they have CST, Mountain Time, all these different things. There's also Deaf Standard Time. Okay, are we ready for the panel? We ready to get this dialogue going? I want to let you know that we have received questions from your emails and the live stream too. So thank you. Yes, thanks. So now we're ready to get started with the panel. I do want to have a clear understanding of what this will look like. So we will supply questions first. We have 4 questions ready that they have already reflected upon and prepared an answer. So with each question, expect or don't expect for all 4 panelists to give an answer. And if they feel like they would like to supply an answer, they will raise their hand and then come over here and tell their story and comment, and then we'll take turns. But, you know, sometimes there will be a moment of silence, and of course that's normal, where they can think about things. So don't feel like you're on the spot, oh, I don't know what to talk about, and just be so stressed out, you know. There's no need for that. Don't worry. Okay? Anything to add? All right. First question. So, looking back, tell us about an incident or an event that inspired you to focus on space. Was it teachers, class, extracurricular activities, books? What made you decide that you wanted to be involved in space?
And that question is so important because that really just ties into everything. I mean, now at your age, you guys, you're starting to think about this and you're making that connection to arrive there.
Who wants to take it? I'll start.
We have Johanna. Come on up.
Hello, hello, hello. To be honest, my answer is something you might not expect. Was I 100% go-getter to work for NASA? Really, I wasn't. But looking at the rockets and seeing the Challenger, and the explosion, I remember seeing that. I believe I was 4th grade. Really, 4th grade, I learned about that incident, but it happened prior to then. And when I saw that, you know, yes, I thought NASA was cool, but I didn't think that NASA was the place I would work in the future. I thought about Google, Microsoft, different kind of coding companies. I had never even thought of NASA. And really, that was a big mistake. And really, it happened by accident. When I was at the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities, I believe it was my junior year, and occasionally I would get emails about internship opportunities, and often, you know, I overlooked them, and that was a mistake. If you see an opportunity, take it. But, you know, I was busy with homework, etc., and, you know, just blew it off, and that was a mistake. Again, I blew it off. And so, you know, the 3rd time they sent something to me, I thought, okay, fine, I'm going to submit an application, and really thought, I don't have a chance at this, you know. You have to be incredibly brilliant. And then they sent me an internship offer, and it just really shocked me. You know, I remember reading that email and, you know, just thinking, is this really happening? And, you know, cleaning my glasses off and reading it again, and, you know, leaving the room and coming back and reading it again. It took several times for that to sink in. So don't think it's impossible. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to be the only one that's not a genius, you know, and all those people are going to be older. Are they going to be patient with me? Are they going to help teach me? And really, I got to tell you, when I got there, I realized there's such a variation in ages. There's younger people, there's older people from other businesses arriving to the company late. It's so eclectic. And people are so motivated to teach one another, and they inspired me to work at NASA and to be better. So if you don't feel like you have inspiration, it's okay. Take your time to learn yourself, who you are, and find your identity. And, I didn't really feel that inspiration until I actually came to NASA.
One thing that really touched me about what you said, I was reading through some articles kind of preparing to be an MC. I wanted to know who you were, Johanna. And it says here that an important influence is just to keep an open mind.
Yes,
and
that's
now
so important.
I see why. Life happens and life goes by, and you maybe ignore the opportunities that are knocking on the door until finally you have that open mind to open the door.
And I mean, that control room experience, that's just one of those options that is so important to keep an open mind. You might feel like you're going to sink, but go ahead. Take that dive. Go for that swim.
Round of applause for Johanna. Any of our other panelists want to answer the question? Well, I'm curious about yours, Austin. I think you should answer.
Okay, Austin Viday.
So, really, ever since I was a little boy, I've always liked, building things. I've known what I wanted. I knew I wanted to be an engineer. And there was one time when I was a young kid, I remember seeing a movie, a film, and, Aliens, that movie, Aliens? Yeah, there you go, that sign. Watching that, I was totally fascinated, and my eyes were just bugged out watching this movie, and had so many different kinds of things, and I just kept thinking, are aliens real? Are they really out there? And so it just started my curiosity. My curiosity was piqued, and I wanted to, try and do all of these different things, knowing that I could. So I wanted to research and try to understand, do aliens really exist? And that was sort of the spark that just helped me become more passionate about working at NASA. So, life went on, and my story is kind of the same as Johanna's. And, I wasn't really, dialed in to NASA and technology, but I saw the opportunity while I was at college, and I applied for a program called the Entry Point program. So I applied for that opportunity to work at NASA, and literally I just grabbed hold of that opportunity. And really, it started as a little boy thinking about aliens. So kind of a funny story. All right, round of applause. So it's interesting how a movie can influence the path you take in your career.
It's true.
Aliens. Oh, no!
You should become an engineer.
Interesting. Good alien, Jeremy. Nice. See, now I'm inspired to become an engineer. That's right. Got me going. Okay, so any other answers for that question?
Me?
Sure. Come on up. Julia.
It's funny because that question's kind of hard. It's something I've kind of known since I was born, I feel like. I feel like I was destined to go to space. Ever since I was little, I always looked up to the stars and just wondered what could be out there. And when I was little, think about that was before Facebook, internet, it was TV and books. And I remember we had a special trip to the planetarium when I was a little kid, and I was just mesmerized, thinking about that's my home, looking up into those stars. I remember telling my parents I wanted a telescope, and they had got me. I didn't want the children's telescope. I wanted the fancy, expensive telescope that I could actually see planets, and I was shocked. My parents did buy one from the family, and we could see Saturn, Jupiter, and the moon, and I just was so enriched by that experience. I wanted to be involved in different things, but then often I was not allowed different opportunities as a child. we didn't have Deaf Space Camp until much later on. So I want to encourage you in June, I think. I think it's 24th. I want to encourage you, go to Deaf Space Camp. It is a awesome experience. I'm an adult now, and I still haven't gone, but I hope one day to be able to go there. I haven't only worked as an intern at NASA, but I've worked for different companies, Virgin, Oriental, so forth. So I think there's some high school programs that are already up and running. So I encourage you to look online, not only at NASA, but other opportunities as well, but high school programs that you can get involved with. Start early. Earlier is better. And you don't have to be, space doesn't have to be your thing. If you're interested in coding, if you're interested in robotics, media and film, arts, those avenues have their opportunities as well. So, I wish I didn't have to grow up in the time I did, because there's so many opportunities now for you to take advantage of.
That's such a great point about Deaf Space Camp. I want all of y'all to really keep that in mind to, hit up your teachers for information.
And if you have never experienced a planetarium, I highly encourage you, go. It is awesome. You will be inspired seeing the stars and the explanations of everything in space. A planetarium. Ask your teachers, parents. Go. It is a cool experience.
Yes, it is. All right, next question. Okay, so I'm just curious. I really want to see your inner geek come out in this answer, okay? Simply because, you have been working in this field, you have your mundane activities that you do, but there is some things that just give you those chills, that excitement. So what is it that does it for you?
I have some, but I want to hear what you guys say first.
I took the first one last time. Yeah, so can you sign the question again? Sure. So in your everyday work experience, there are some things that are just, mundane, and you really have to hone in on and figure things out. But there may be a special project that you've experienced, or something that just breaks up your daily routine, that gives you a sense of accomplishment, something unexpected that just, kind of lit your fire and gave you the passion. Maybe it was, working with your team that really inspires you. It could be that, making some sort of secret code that's going to do something. Or is there something, maybe it's figuring out how to have good interpreters for communication. Okay, do I need to stand up and come over there? All right, we have Johanna coming up. And I want to thank all of the panelists for coming up for live stream so that we can see your answers.
So I'm still figuring out things, but I know one thing I do always enjoy. One of my coworkers that works with code, we look it over and kind of make sure that it doesn't need to be revised, and I was able to break my coworker's code. So when I was able to break their code, they were a little annoyed with me, and it was so fun to see the reaction. And I just thought that was so awesome, because I was able to break it, and that means that there was something that they could improve. And that challenged me, being able to break their code. So I do enjoy reading that. A lot of times things are tedious, but I do enjoy those challenges. I love learning more and more and more. I think before I went into NASA, I knew nothing about aircraft, really. And coming in there, it has been such a rich learning experience. And that's kind of been my experience.
That's a great answer, because that kind of ties into what I want to mention. Breaking code, that's great. But have you ever felt like sometimes there has been, critiques, or you've broken a code, or you haven't been able to, and you felt a little bit defeated, and you had that moment of frustration? How have you overcome that sense?
So I haven't really had people be critical of my code, but, trying to break my code. um, I didn't really feel like I was defeated. I took it as an opportunity to improve. So when people find errors, of course, it's like, oh, I forgot to add that. Or I remember with one code I was developing, it was such a struggle, an ongoing struggle. It was like a full week working on this. And the lead came over and was trying to analyze this, and we were working on it back and forth. And finally, we found that the problem was that on the computer there was a file, and in that file, the word space had been removed from there. And because the operating system didn't like space as the name, and that totally threw everything off. Oh, there was a space within the title, and that's what threw everything off. And so when we found that, it's like, oh, we finally found it. But then also it was like, oh, my goodness, what a waste of my time. A week of stress. And, I didn't pull any hair out, but, still, it was such a headache. And that really stuck with me. I will never forget that. Take the spaces out of the titles of the files. That I will never forget.
It happens.
So Windows, Linux, Mac, they're all different. Maybe on Windows it'll work, whereas on Mac it totally throws things off.
Yeah, you got to work it all out. That's a great lesson. Don't give up in your struggles.
Learn from your failures. It's okay to fail. Don't let it get you down. Don't take your time to cry and pout, but then get back up again and start over.
I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you. All right, next question, or
do you want one more panelist to talk about this?
Yeah, all right.
Meyers
Let's
is
bring
ready.
This question about what would you do? I'm talking about what I did and not necessarily what I'm doing now. One thing that's always inspired me, that's made me feel good about my involvement in all of this in the past, is that, keep in mind, they were studying motion sickness, and I was involved in that research. And ever since then, as far as I know, there has not yet been an astronaut that has ever gotten sick or motion sick to the point where they couldn't function. And so that research that I was involved in was successful, and I contributed to that. And that, to me, just thrills me to the bone. And, Russia, their astronauts, some of them did get sick. I've heard that. But American astronauts never did. There was slight sickness, but they were able to carry out their functions and do their job. So that was inspiring.
Okay, just thinking about projects that you were involved in related to space. Do you want to expound upon something really cool involved with that project?
I think Johanna's already discussed about the conventional flaps and then the new flaps on the wings of the plane. Great, Austin. Yeah, come on up. Austin, please. We're just kind of buying time until y'all decide who's coming.
So I have two projects that I've been involved with, and I'm trying to decide which one's my favorite. Okay, well, let me talk about this first one. Over at the Johnson Space Center, I was working with building a website. I was working with a team. And we were working on a project for the International Space Station. And remember, I had talked about how that space station revolves around the Earth. And so the project was involved with building a website and developing code. And, for example, if we had an engineer who was a safety engineer, meaning they're focused on safety safety on the International Space Station, keeping people safe. And there's so much data that they can watch, and they get a lot of good or bad information from that. And so looking at those emails, and so maybe in one cabin the pressure's low, and then looking at the website, looking up research on pressure, and then finding information related to pressure, finding where the error is, analyzing the problem, and then solving the problem. So our website helped that safety engineer resolve those problems. I worked with so many technicians and learned so much. And I think I want to stress Johanna's point of staying open-minded, because sometimes you can feel overwhelmed. But if you're working with your team, your interpreters, everyone's there to help one another, and the goal is to be successful and have fun too.
Thank you very much.
So it seems like a lot of people have sent emails. So I think we need to go ahead and get started answering some of your questions. So panelists, if we could have one answer per question, if that'll be all right, because I didn't realize we would have such a lengthy list of questions. Thank you, audience.
I'm
this is
so
great.
excited. Yes.
Do you want to go ahead we'll skip this. Get to the email questions. Okay, give an example of a communication hurdle, being deaf or hard of hearing, that you've experienced and how you worked through that communication barrier.
Oh, gosh. Okay. All right. I'll go. All right. Johanna.
Looks like we're going to have a good story.
Okay. Well, thank you for reminding me of this. I didn't think about it till now. In the control room, this is a perfect example of overcoming a communication hurdle. Julia was just talking in one of her answers about how the hearing people focused on using radio communication, and the operators used, radio communication, and that's a communication challenge for us. But I want to briefly explain. Many people think that communication is all-encompassing and only focused on auditory, but there's so many things under the umbrella of communication. So, today we have what's called a chief engineer, basically the engineering boss man, or woman. And there's also a person called the test director. And then you have ops, or operations. And they're actually called the test conductor. So in the control room, you have all of these people. They're sitting at their monitors, and each sort of area has different specialties. And in my area, it's systems. And there's a picture of a man sitting next to me, and he's a systems engineer. So he's systems engineer 1, I'm systems engineer 2. I don't communicate with the test director. Only the systems engineer 1 communicates with him. And so our team communicates to the test director. The test director then communicates with the test conductor, and the test conductor communicates with the aircraft. And so we don't want to have so many people talking on a line that it becomes confusing. So there is a proper channel to go through for communication. We can hear everyone talking on the channel, but only one person is allowed to talk to the other. Now, how I worked that is we used an interpreter, but in the control room, obviously, that's going to require training. And sometimes there would be some mock training that happened. So maybe the aircraft isn't actually up in space or anything. We're just going through a training procedure. And so we actually have, okay, hold on. There's an LRC. It's the Landry Research Center. And what I found out happened is that this control room and their control room, they had a sort of collaborative project that was going on. And there's some video feeding that's going on with the interpreter there with me. So we're actually communicating across 2 control rooms. So we had to connect all this communication up so that it would work smoothly. And there was an assigned interpreter there, and the interpreter and I actually agreed on particular signs for the words used in the control room. And everyone really collaborated well. And my lead, the one responsible for all of the people in the control room, actually brought us all together and tried to brainstorm how we could figure out this problem, and with all of these monitors going on at once. And so I had the interpreter up on a screen with me, so I wouldn't have 4 screens in front of me. Now I only have 3, and my interpreter was in just a box on one of the screens, and I was able to monitor all of my responsibilities that way. And it really took a lot of involvement and work, but I was so excited and motivated to continue because, everyone was involved in it. And, as engineers, we love solving problems, and they didn't really think about, a deaf individual won't be able to do this. They thought about, a deaf individual, how can we do this? And so they wanted to solve that problem. And it was awkward, I'll be honest. It was awkward for a little while. But what was important, and what they knew was important, was the open communication and my being able to visually scan all of this coming in and accomplish my work. Really, that's just a good example, a real live example of how to overcome a communication hurdle. I think what's important is that involving the hearing people that you're going to be working with, because it's important to get the deaf person's perspective as well. So teamwork is going to be something that you really need to ingrain in yourself. And I'll be honest, be willing to work with hearing people. Good advice. Thank you for that, Johanna. Okay, Jeremy.
Now we will ask Rachella Moore to come up. She has a list of the questions that have been emailed from the live stream audience. If you'll hold my phone, please. Thank you. Hello. Hello. Thank you so much for sending so many good questions. I'm just so impressed. Wow. Thank you. So, have you found a way to overcome the speed of light? Like Star Trek and videos with no delays in communication?
You're the tech person. I think you should answer that. Not yet, but in the future, maybe. Well, I don't think they can. I can't explain that well. I can't. Well, I'll try my best. Gosh, okay. Julia is going to try to answer this question and knock it out of the park. That's a good question. Historically, we've used what's called a closed-loop radio communication system. And so the mission control room here on Earth, looping up into maybe the International Space Station or the spacecraft, and then just going right back down to mission control. So now we have to figure out different ways to use stronger satellite communication links, faster than the speed of light. That is a question that's going to be up in the air for a while. Who knows? Maybe. But I think in the future, things are going to be improving. On a daily basis, things are changing and getting better. I think that the video link delay will be reduced over time. So it's a hope that moving from radio communication to a video text satellite link is better. Maybe some of you guys and gals out there, the Mars generation, will help solve that.
Next, can we create artificial gravity in space? Is that possible? Maybe, David, you could answer that?
So, David, can you create artificial gravity in space?
Yes, it can be done. But research proves that it was not necessary. So before they were worried so much about the motion sickness and the zero gravity, some people that went into zero gravity got sick. That alone made people sick. But through so much research, they had experimented with the centrifuge devices and found that it wasn't necessary. They were more successful with using medication. That was a big way that they were able to diffuse the motion sickness and decided that adding gravity was not necessary.
That's so interesting. Okay. Austin, this is sort of a three-parter. Each are a little bit different. So, have you already seen a UFO? And have you already seen aliens? And how do you really improve your problem-solving skills and strategies and practice your brain strength or your brain power? How do you do that? Okay, well, those are good questions. So the first one, have I seen a UFO? In real life, no, never. Aliens in real life, never. But I want to one day. We'll see what happens. Now, in terms of just how to enhance your problem-solving skills, mainly it's just taking time, you know. You have to work through different problems. I think it's important to receive feedback. That's so critical. You cannot really improve without getting feedback. I am so fortunate because I do have several mentors that help me out. And you don't work, working is not easy. It can be hard. And so getting your mentors to give you that feedback, because there are some people that maybe aren't comfortable giving feedback. You do need to find that particular person because you want to have that desire to get feedback and improve yourself. Also, in my free time, I read. That is so important. It helps me to improve on how I think and all of that. And then I work on different projects. I have personal projects that I love kind of delving into, creating apps and different things. And I think that helps me to improve.
Thank you. Okay, Johanna. How do you feel about becoming an engineer? How does that make you feel? If I stand over here, is that fine? Becoming an engineer is truly awesome. I've seen different kinds of challenges. I love problem solving. Learning alone, I love. Learning something new. You know how I talked about the struggle mastering that code and how excited I got and felt better? So being an engineer and solving problems makes me feel good, and it continuously involves me improving my skills. I have to be able to work with a team of engineers and brainstorm together. It's not me alone. It's a collaborative effort. So becoming an engineer for me means gaining independence, continuing to spur on my motivation, and that's what's made me enjoy being an engineer. I think being an engineer, that's the best decision I ever made. And if I wouldn't have been open and minded, I wouldn't have made that decision.
Thank you. There's so many more questions. We are going to have to cut this soon. I have a quick follow-up question. Do your team members learn sign language to communicate with you?
So the team, some of them have learned some signs, a little bit. In my office area, there's 2 people that are learning sign language, and sometimes they'll come in and, simple messages such as, hi, good morning, they've picked up those kind of things. They've learned some other signs such as stop, wait, but most of our communication is through gesture. Or we'll make eye contact with one another, and body language, facial expressions. You know, there are so many people at NASA that are so busy. And I've worked there for 3.5 years, and, I've gotten so overwhelmed with work. So learning sign and having time to do that is difficult. They have taken on trying to learn, and, just so much can be communicated through facial expressions and body language. I don't understand that. It's obvious through what the look on my face is. So I have been impressed with one person. They've looked at the interpreters' facial expressions as well, too. So we have a team of interpreters that we work with, and that's been quite an experience.
Okay, I actually have one more question because I was watching and it looked like such a fun question. Now, is the universe flat? Is the universe flat?
Talking about 2D, 3D, 4D, I think the universe is beyond 4D. I think the opportunities are limitless. I think the job of testing and getting real proof, that's when we'll have the results. But that involves more work. At my center, we have a saying that, in English, separate the real from the imaginary through flight. So what you envision, we have to test before it becomes real. And that's my center's philosophy. So the universe is flat. I don't know how to answer that.
Okay, so there is one famous astronaut physicist.
Love.
Oh, okay, good. And he typically talks about this, and it's so true. We are made of stars, is what he says, because the universe is made of what? It's made of matter and energy, and that's what we're made of. We're all of these atoms and matter and energy come together, and that's a star. So we are made of stars.
Okay, so now we are soon approaching the time when we will go to lunch. If you're watching from the live stream, please continue to send in your evaluations, and thank you for watching us today. If you're here, next on the agenda is lunch. So we'll be going over to the Career Technology Education Building and meet in the multi-purpose room, where we'll have some hands-on activities for the afternoon. Oh, okay. We are going to try to ask one final question. Please keep your answers short.
Okay, one last question here. Okay, I'm just kind of pull this out now. Imagine yourself in a time machine traveling through the time-space continuum, and you're going back to meet your former self as a high schooler, as the age of these kids in the audience. What is one thing you would say to yourself that's important?
Oh, David, what did you say earlier?
Austin, you have something? Okay. David, after Austin, maybe you could answer. Okay, great. I think what's important to tell myself at that age is to stop wasting your time on video games. In all honesty, I think I was addicted for about 2 years of my life. It was 10 hours a day that I was just on a video game. And I feel like reading would have been way more important.
Thank you.
And I give that advice to you, Jeremy, as well.
Okay, that's a little embarrassing.
Okay. All right. Who else? A little younger Johanna, a little younger Julia, or a younger David. What advice would you give to yourself? Okay, Johanna? Or David? David? Oh.
It's really hard to answer that.
Okay. Well, let's bring up Johanna then. If I met a younger Johanna, I would say, hey, find a deaf mentor. Find a female engineer. Let them be your mentors and teach you so many things. Because I really grew up always wanting a role model, a deaf female engineer role model, someone that had the experiences that I wanted to learn from. And so I think it was because of my desire when I was younger for that I want to become a deaf role model for those girls now. As a little girl, I didn't have that. Now I am that.
Julia? One thing, still today, I have to remind myself, it's okay to ask. Go ahead. If you have a curiosity about anything, a person, a job, reach out to them, contact them, write a note to them. It's okay. If they don't respond, you move along, but ask questions. And also, if you want something but it doesn't work out, sometimes something better will happen for you. If you miss out on one opportunity and then you look back there's usually a reason for that. Wow. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you to the live stream audience for watching today, and thank you to my co-MC, Austin Andrews.
And my co-MC, Jeremy Weston. And again, we want to thank all of those who helped prepare and organize the event for today. And we are excited to see all of you after lunch.
Yes, thank you. Goodbye, live audience.